Hi guys, this is Connie, back for more Connie Reads the River. We are on chapter 23. I think this is the next to last chapter. Woo! Here we go. He became something other than himself that afternoon. When he began to swim, after he'd overcome the agony of starting and his muscles had loosened somewhat, he tried to think. The raft would move with the current, if it did not get hung up. Brian would also move with the current, plus he had the added speed of swimming, and he should gain rapidly. But when he rounded that first bend and did not see the raft, and cleared the next bend 200 yards further on, and did not see the raft, worry took him. The mud stopped at the side, and stood as much as he could in the mud. It was nearly a quarter of a mile to the next bend, and there was no raft. Every muscle in his body was on fire. He slipped back into the water and began swimming again, taking long, even strokes, kicking and pushing along the mud, pulling himself forward. Another bend and another, always reaching, and always Brian's eyes sought the still form, the thatched top of the raft. Nothing. The river seemed to have swallowed Derek. Altogether he rounded 6 shallow bends, and still there was no raft. The stupid raft that had hung up on every bend when he was trying to steer it, and now perversely held the center of the river somehow. There was nothing but the green wall along either side. The trees that grew higher and higher, now that the rocks hills were passed, until they nearly crossed over the top of the river. The green wall that closed in and covered him as he slid along the water, wanting to scream, but pulling instead, always pulling, a stroke, then another stroke, until there was not a difference between him and the water, until his skin was the water and the water was him, until he was the river and he came to the raft. He nearly swam past it. Brian moved near some willows, his face down in the water, reaching with his left arm. When he raised his head, he was looking at the raft. It had somehow come through all the bends and curves, and there must have caught a slight cross current. The raft had moved to the outside of a shallow curve and had glided back beneath some overhang willows and low trees. All that showed was the rear end of the raft and the bottom of Derek's shoes. Derek! Brian's hand had almost brushed the raft, but he had not looked up at the exact point that he would have missed it. He grabbed the raft, pulled himself up alongside. Derek lay still, though his body had moved, twisted sideways on the raft. Derek, he said again, softer. Derek's head was still to the side, his eyes half open, but if he had been pushed underwater in the rapids, even for a moment, it might be too late. Derek, he looked done, gone, dead. Brian tried his wrist, but could feel no pulse. He watched Derek's chest, but it didn't seem to move. He leaned down, put his ear against Derek's mouth, held his breath. There, softly on his ear, a touch of breath. Once, then again, small puffs of air. Derek. He was alive, still alive. It was as if everything came loose in Brian at the same time. His body, his mind, his soul were all exhausted, and he fell across Derek, asleep or unconscious, fell with his legs still in the water. Derek. That's the end of chapter 23. Be careful with that and enjoy, please and thank you. I will see you for the last chapter next time.